And, John, as we were discussing a bit earlier, a little bit of a firestorm manufactured by the D.C. Press Corps on behalf of their clients, the Democrat Socialist Party, after Trump made this comment at a rally in Dayton, Ohio over the weekend.
Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath.
And then the customary hue and cry followed with charges that Trump was once again advocating political violence and our democracy's at stake, and he and his band of goons are a threat to the American public, and so on and so forth. You're familiar with the concept.
As we speak, I'm watching it right now on CNN, the pouty-faced CNN anchor Kate Boldan exhorting people to hate on
Disturbing
Trump.
News out of Dayton, Ohio this weekend as the president calls for a bloodbath. Right, yeah, no, we get it. We get it. And so does John Solomon. Actually, John Solomon has a good piece. Legacy of Deception, Democrat-led, taxpayer-funded machine exposed anew for misleading Americans. Yeah, so, what do we do about it other than explain the ruses that are afoot? It seems to me that maybe we're taking the bait and focusing on worrying about what CNN or MSNBC are platforming for the new Marxists are doing with respect to the new arrivals as it pertains to elections. And there should be more talk about the mechanics of elections, particularly in states that don't have a particularly good track record of late, like Maricopa County, Arizona, in administering elections. And you've got same-day voter registration, and you have no ID requirements.
It's racist. The Attorney General of the United States has ruled that if you want voter ID, you're racist, basically, right?
Yeah, but so here's the thing: the bloodbath silliness over the weekend that demands a response.
Yeah.
So that people get the full context, and then they invoke Charlottesville, and you have to go back and bring in Charlottesville and what the president actually said to expose the mendacity of the left, But I mean, the propaganda machine, you can't do anything about other than what I just described. The administration of elections, since that is what this is all leading to, you can do something about. And I wonder if enough is being done about that. For more on this, John Solomon, award-winning investigative journalist, founder of Just the News, justthenews.com. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be with you guys.
So the bloodbath moment over the weekend, a good example of the sorts of things you're writing about in your piece.
Yeah, listen, it's obvious what the context was, that if he wasn't elected, if these policies weren't put in place, that the country would continue down the decline that it's been in the last 4 years. But the media can't report it honestly. They have to look for every gotcha moment and try to contrive gotcha moments. They've been contriving things, really, since 2015, 2016 with Russia collusion, something that I played a big role unraveling. And then over the last 6 to 8 years, they have repeatedly misled the American public. And if you're listening to CNN today, or if you're watching it, or you're reading the New York Times, you're willfully choosing to be misled, because those publications have misled this country over and over and over again. The record of inaccuracy and dishonesty in the last 8 years in those publications is enormous. And so if you're watching them, you're making that choice. You want your bias confirmation to be confirmed. But most people are now being much more choosy in the news. They're reading lots of more sites to make sure that they get a more complete 360-degree look at it. And one of the greatest examples of it is you look at the polling 2-3 years ago, less than 20% of Americans thought Joe Biden had done something wrong in Hunter Biden's dealings. Today, 65 or 67%, I think it was, in the AP North poll found that Joe Biden either did something illegal or unethical with his son. How did that happen? It didn't happen because they read the New York Times or the CNN. It happened because they listen to your show. They read my site. They're getting news from other places, and they're realizing, hey, we've been misled by the establishment press. And I think that is the answer to this. Every time there's a false misuse of a quote in a Trump speech or an effort to censor something that was actually accurate, we just have to speak up. We have to write and get around the blockade. And the truth of the matter is the mainstream media has made themselves significantly less relevant the last 8 years by constantly being wrong.
In your piece, Legacy of Deception, Democrat-led, taxpayer-funded machine exposed anew for misleading Americans, and I recommend it highly to everyone that I'm talking to today and everyone that reads John Cass News and so forth, because I just think it's very important to call out in specific, like, for example, you call out in specific Adam Schiff in this piece, who promoted a lie to the American people that Trump was an agent. I know it's difficult to even discuss it without laughing, but an agent of the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
Trump is a Russian stooge, to quote some of the media with that, and you call it out. But is that what we're supposed to do? Call it every time they do something like that? Call it out?
Absolutely. Listen, that's the gift that our founding fathers gave us, the gift of free speech. And thus far, though that left has tried to take it from us with the censorship regime, it has prevailed. And I think the more it prevails, the more we use it to our advantage. 4 years ago, Rumble was not really a large platform. Today, it's a very large platform. There are alternate news, social media sites taking root every day, giving us alternatives around it. There are new news sites like mine and all the great radio shows that are out there today. There is a way to just keep using it. Now, listen, there ought to be other penalties. We ought to sue when we're wrongly defamed. We ought to sue when we're blocked from speaking. You have to use the courts. The courts have been a tremendous ally of the original rights that our fathers gave us, even when Congress and the White House haven't always been. But the biggest alliance has been watching Democrats in Congress work with their allies in the media and their friends in the social media world to try to impose narratives that were laughable. And, just one example, I use it in the story, but when you think about it, the common person in America goes, of course that's silly. The January 6th committee chose to credit the third-hand hearsay account of Cassidy Hutchinson that President Trump on his way back from the Capitol, or on the way back from the ellipse, tried to hijack his own presidential limo. He allegedly assaulted Secret Service agents and grabbed the steering wheel of the presidential limo, the Beast, and take it to the Capitol that day. That was a third-hand account when the committee had a first-hand account from the driver, which it did tell the American public about for 3 years, that it never happened. All the agents in that car chase said that never happened. By the way, it's not physically possible. The limo had infrastructure between the president and the drivers. He couldn't get in there. But they were able to carry that out and have the media covered and CNN run it live on television because of this alliance. And we just have to break the alliance up by continuing to tell the truth around them.
So one of the ways to do that, as you said, is to tell the truth around them. But how many articles were written by the New York Times, by the Washington Post, using that lie as fact in their narrative, not even as an opinion, as narrative fact? How many times? And are we supposed to constantly point out every time? Is that what we have to do every time?
In the current world we're in. Yeah, I think we have to keep doing it for a while. And I think over time, the boy that cries wolf phenomenon sets in. And you start to see a lot of sites. Listen, BuzzFeed, which gave us the original Russia collusion story, Christopher Steele,
right?
It doesn't exist anymore as a news site. Over time, the American public are so wise, they will choose and abandon sites that mislead them and gravitate towards sites where they can get the truth. A lot of the major news sites, Vice, which lean to the left and obviously had an agenda, they're in significant trouble, closing up in many ways. The American people vote with their wallet, they vote with their eyeballs, they vote with their feet. And right now you see people leaving blue states. You see them leaving liberal news sites, and you see them leaving liberal policies that have left our country aflame. I think the more we tell the truth over the next couple of years, the more the country will self-correct itself. the greatest mistake that the New York Times and the CNNs and the Democratic parties and the Adam Schiffs make, they believe the American people are stupid. They think they can keep bamboozling them. That is the single greatest liability to their future that they have. They misunderstand the American people. We're busy. We're trying to make ends meet in this economy, but we're pretty smart, and the Democrats don't realize that they keep trying to fool people, and it's going to come at their own detriment.
Yeah, and I think a lot of more and more so, and BuzzFeed is a good example, is they're talking to each other, and they don't have a monetizable audience, which should tell you something about the kind of influence they wield. It's not nothing, but it's diminished. But go back to the other thing I mentioned though too. I agree with the need to respond here and set the record straight on these matters. But what about these other things that I don't think it has penetrated? I think there's a general concern and uneasiness about the administration of elections, but it's a little bit more sterile. It's a little bit more complicated. Things like same-day voter registration in Maricopa County, where you've got the Tucson sector is the most active sector when it comes to illegals crossing into this country, and where the Republican Party is at in terms of ballot integrity and vote-by-mail programs. Seems to me like we need to do more discussion and reporting in this area, if for nothing else than to prompt attention and conversation and maybe prod the Republican Party to do more than it's doing.
Yeah, listen, I think the last 3 weeks have shown a significant transformation of the Republican Party on this issue. And I have a full-time election integrity reporter. There's not many people in the country that have a news site that has a full-time reporter. We think it's that important. That said, dead people, I'm sure, have been voting in Chicago for a long time. And there has always been...
That's the Chicago way, buddy.
Yeah. It is. Yes. And in Detroit and Philadelphia, there's always been efforts to run up the score. And yet, for a long time, Republicans have won races in those states. I think the single biggest learning from 2020, and it took the Republicans 4 years to learn it, not 2, but 4, is that we live in an era where people are either too busy or too lazy to vote on election day. And on the left, it tends to be couch potatoes. On the right, it's people working 2 and 3 jobs. But if you make it easier for them to vote by working with them on getting them registered, getting them to vote early because maybe they can't get on election day, they got the kids at homeschool or 2 jobs to try to make ends meet, you can even the score with what the Democrats have done. The Democrats have built the largest early get-out-the-vote operation in American history. If Republicans do half as much as the Democrats do, they start election day much closer, and of course the election day vote tends to go much more in favor of Republicans. That's what you hear Laura Trump talking about now. That's what Michael Whatley did in North Carolina as the Republican Party chair in that state. That's what Ron DeSantis won when the poll showed him winning by 10%. He won by 20 in 2022. Early voting, once the Republicans master that, this scale will be leveled again.
Is there time enough, though, between now and this election to do that?
There is. There's 3 things going on. There's a lot of lawsuits being filed every day. So the new RNC filed a lawsuit last week. That was big. But there have been nonprofit groups or 501c4s that have been working on this for 2 years. They weren't going to trust that the RNC could come around in time to do it. So they went out and they raised a lot of money, and they built an army in the field, an infrastructure in the field that can rival what the Democrats have. It's been going on for 2 years very quietly. It hasn't been chronicled, but it's going on out there. And I think it's that nonprofit system or that 501c4 system combined with the RNC that will help the Republicans have a much more even playing field on early voting. And if that happens, I don't think we'll be talking about theft of election in the 2024 November timeframe. I think we'll have a different outcome. I think that's the place that Republicans just lag behind, and they unilaterally disarmed for 3 elections, 2018, 2020, 2022. Now they're in the game, and I think that's going to make it a much different looking election come November.
John Solomon, award-winning investigative journalist and founder of Just the News. Do check out his most recent column, Legacy of Deception. John, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Real good
Great
stuff.
to be with you guys.
Really good stuff.
Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.